You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to the Gerontological Society of America's Career Conversation, Finding the Right Fit, Recruiting Postdocs and Students. I'm Dr. Rosamond Giovanni from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio School of Nursing, and will serve as a co-moderator for today's session. I am joined today by GSA members, Dr. Patty Slatem, Virginia Center on Aging and GSA Visiting Scholar, and Dr. Xian Yao Lin, T32 Postdoctoral Fellow at Weill Cornell Medicine. Dr. Xian, Patty, and I are members of the GSA Career Conversation work group that plans the career conversations and mentoring consultancies. The work group provides a forum for an exchange of ideas about issues and strategies to build a successful career in gerontology. Pass it over to you.
Yeah, so before we begin today's program, I would like to provide a few logistical considerations. First, please keep your audio on mute during the event and submit your questions for the panelists through the Zoom chat. And this career conversation is being recorded and will be available after the event on the GSA website. Finding that just right person for a role can take time, patience, and a lot of work. Are you responsible for building a team or will be soon? How do you look at candidates and ultimately determine who to admit or hire? Are these strategies and tools available to enhance the recruitment process and assess candidates? Whether you're new to the recruiting process, experienced in hiring graduate students or postdocs, or are a trainee looking to learn more about recruitment and hiring, we look forward to engaging with you in this career conversation. And today, our panel of GSA members will share how they have approached recruitment and hiring and share tips and strategies for success.
Thank you. We're going to open today's career conversation by introducing our panelists. We're delighted to have two distinguished GSA members with us to share their perspectives on recruiting and hiring postdocs and students. First, we welcome Dr. Olivia Clay, Professor of Psychology and Director of the Developmental Psychology Doctoral Program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. We are also pleased to have joining us Dr. Nancy Glenn, Associate Professor of Epidemiology and Director of the Master's Degree Programs at the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health. And our panelists have valuable experience and perspectives to share, and we really look forward to learning from you in this conversation. And we'll get our discussion started with some questions for the panelists. And our first question to the two of you is, can you briefly tell us about how you work with graduate students and postdocs in your setting, and what are the characteristics or skills that really make for a successful graduate student or postdoc? And we'll maybe start with Dr. Clay.
Sure. Thanks for that introduction. So in addition to directing our developmental psychology doctoral program, I also have leadership roles in some centers here at the university, so some NIH-funded centers. So we have a Deep South Resource Center for Minority Aging Research, where we work with junior faculty members and postdocs through that center. And we have an Alzheimer's disease research center where we work with junior faculty and postdocs as well. So, you know, I found that having a good match as far as research interests with postdocs and graduate students has always been beneficial, particularly for our graduate programs. When we are admitting students, we definitely try to have that match between the mentor and the mentee. We found that if we have that match with students coming into the program matched to a mentor already, that those relationships seem to work out very well. As far as, you know, postdocs, we like to see postdocs who have, you know, identified us as a potential site for them, who have done some research to see if the setting that or laboratory or setting that they are going into is a fit to what they want their future career goals and area of research to be. So I think that match is very important. And for programs, you know, we really try to focus on issues of DEI, specifically if you have diverse environments, then those settings seem to thrive because you have different perspectives from some of the ideas that individuals bring. And, we understand that different postdocs, different graduate students need different levels of support sometimes to be successful. And finally, making sure that everybody feels as if they're a part of the team and, feels free to voice their opinions and be heard and consider themselves a contributor. So those are some of the things that we really like to focus on.
Thank you so much for that. I hear the importance of the match and the attention to the value of a diverse environment, and I appreciate that. And Dr. Glenn, can you share with us a little bit about your setting and what happens there?
Yeah. So thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here today. So here at the University of Pittsburgh, particularly in the Department of Epidemiology, we have a number of T32s that have pre-doctoral and postdoctoral slots. I am, in my role specifically, I provide mentorship as a primary mentor, secondary mentor, and also I consider myself a connector and a networker, and sometimes the mama bear, and sometimes the concierge, whatever it takes. I chair the admissions committee. I co-chair the admissions committee. So I see a lot of the pre-doctoral applicants coming through, and at the postdoctoral level, I serve as one of the co-investigators on the T32 epidemiology of aging. So I'm involved with how we're connecting with our T32 trainees for that particular training grant. And I also have some involvement with the cardiovascular and our neuroepi and other training grants. So through those pipelines, there's a lot of places and opportunity to find good fits for students. As far as, so that's, I would say that the work setting where I draw my experience. And then of course I direct the master's degree program. So a really great pipeline for all of those, the doctoral and postdoctoral slot comes from really having a very strong master's program as well. And it's not only having them stay in our institution, it's giving Dr. Clay good people and training people from the, from the beginning. So I think it's across the entire span where my involvement comes in with training. All right, so what characteristics or skills? To me, it always comes down to communication, being prepared, knowing, I think people are very successful when they communicate, they're prepared, they understand, the environment that they're in and contribute academically and socially, and just are kind of all in. And we provide a very inclusive environment, and just to me, showing up is another thing that it's just really important, being present. So especially in this Zoom world that we're living in now, I kind of insist a little bit on I want to see you in person, right? I want to see you. And, so I think those are things. There's other things I'm sure that we'll touch upon along the way, but I think those are fit, and obviously those things we could talk about as we go along, but I think that communication and preparedness are all important to a mentor-mentee relationship.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing important characteristics for the new trainees. So my next question is, what strategies or tools have you found helpful in recruiting trainees, both like postdocs or students? And I'll start with you, Dr. Clay, again, so we'll give some rest to Dr. Glenn.
Okay. Sure. I think, personally as a program director for a doctoral program, and, being in centers where we have opportunities available. I think really just, taking opportunities to be in front of as many individuals as possible and to talk about those opportunities, things that we have going on, to, get not to allow people to put a face with the university or with a particular program, I think is very important. So, participating in venues like this, I think is very important, providing value to individuals that, might not have thought about your program, but, they've been exposed to you in a particular setting and you've provided some type of value or information to them, then I think they open up to some of the opportunities that you have. So things like that. I think also, trying to stay in tap with, the generation that we're in and, using different outlets to highlight some of the work that we're doing at the university. So whether that's different social media outlets, et cetera, some more non-traditional ways of getting information about our programs, the success of individuals in the programs, the graduates of the programs. I really like what Dr. Glenn was saying as far as connecting people, because I know as far as my research collaborations, some of my graduates have joined other individuals' labs and vice versa. So really just networking, getting the word out there and being active, being proactive, I think is really things that have been successful for us.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's very important, being active and proactive, especially nowadays where the social media plays an important role. Thank you for sharing. What do you say, Dr. Glenn?
Yeah, to me, I think being visible at meetings, meeting students, meeting in person, having conversations, meeting people for coffee or talking via Zoom. I mean, being accessible to talk about programs. And honestly, I think our best advertisement really is our current trainees that are presenting at meetings and in leadership roles at GSA and other, in other organizations. When others see them thriving and presenting and doing well, and it's probably the best advertisement that you can get, So I think visibility, I think you're right. Visibility has changed over the years, be it, people are tweeting about their paper they published or other social media outlets or good old GSA Connect or whatever it may be. I mean, having, meeting other trainees and going to meetings and even going to maybe some talks that you wouldn't normally go to yourself at these meetings and seeing what people are doing. I think that it's just important to kind of broaden your scope of who you think would be a good, strong trainee. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to recruit these days. I certainly talk to my colleagues that are doing the similar work. And we're always saying to each other, so you have anyone coming down the pike that, that would be a good fit for me? My doctoral student that's graduating in 2 weeks came from another program, and a colleague said, this person would be a really great fit for you. And then she'll be starting a postdoc at UCSF soon. And it was the same thing. I got someone great for you. It's just kind of connecting the dots sometimes and helping facilitate those meetings. I think we do a lot of facilitating in our roles, not only for ourselves, but for our trainees for their next steps.
Yeah, it sounds like networking is really key to a lot of this. And we've had career conversations about building our networks and the importance of them, but it's our professional associations are certainly one way where that can happen, right? And it's thinking about its impact on recruitment for students and postdocs to programs is another important aspect, I think. And we didn't really stress so much in that thinking about it, but I like where you're going with this, that the networking that we all do with each other has many benefits, and this is one of them, right?
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you all, what methods you have put in place or strategies to assess candidates that you found helpful. I'm hearing, seeing people and interviewing with them face to face, but I'm wondering if there are any other tools or strategies that you all have come across. I was a graduate program director for 20 years, and I did spend a good bit of time trying to find those just right candidates and knowing whether it was a really good fit often came down to writing skills or interest in developing them and other kinds of things. And I'm just curious what you all have found helpful in assessing.
Yeah, I'll start that one as well. So, once we get past the point of, looking at seeing what everyone looks like on paper and, get down to a number where we're really trying to interview, I think, spending as much time with those individuals as possible, and also allowing individuals who are on their same, I guess, progression level, whether it's other graduate students, other postdocs as well, spend time with those individuals as well. And, just allowing those individuals to talk about their research interests in their own words and the papers that they might have done or the presentations that they might have done, because, people get differing amount of help when they're putting their application materials together. So just hearing those individuals, either vocalize or do a writing sample on the spot to truly make sure that they understand the information that's in their application packet has really been something that's been beneficial in my opinion.
I agree 100%. I would, and you articulated it very well. I think the other thing that I find helpful is talking to their former mentors. I think it's important to know if the person who's going to be the new mentor, how do their styles jive? And you don't always get that from an so does this person need a weekly meeting? If you can't offer a weekly meeting, then maybe this isn't the right, this is the right fit. Or maybe they've been, not that open to constructive criticism, or maybe they, I think everyone has different styles, and sometimes, you can get a vibe from a former mentor on what this person needs, what they need. And then you need to assess, can I provide what, you think they need? Because sometimes it could be the greatest scientific fit, ever, but if there's just some communication or other things that just, are that could be barriers to the relationship, being strong, I think you can usually get a sense of that from former mentors.
Wow. So for trainees, it's very important to maintain good relationship throughout, because the world is so small, you can get the feedback from other mentors right away. So
100%.
that's very important. So
yeah, and I think I also heard, which I really resonated with me, is that you have to understand what you can actually do before you launch into talking, with them. I mean, what can I offer in this environment that I'm in? And where are our strengths? Where are things that are going to be challenging for us to meet? And if those things that are challenging for us to meet are very important to that trainee, it might not be the best. Yeah. So really understanding what we can and cannot offer.
Right.
We can't promise the sun to get the best, whatever we think to come there either, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the next questions. What recommendation would you offer for those new to recruiting, students or postdocs, any trainees?
I think one bit of advice would be, don't be in a hurry. I think sometimes we, we might, when we're at that stage, we might be excited that people are interested in working with us and, select the first couple of people that come in the door. So, but I think you really can't be in a hurry to find that proper match, because, you know, this is an individual, specifically if it's a graduate student or postdoc, that's going to be a part of your life for the next couple of years. So I really think it's important to take your time, make sure it's a good fit, and you know, review as many applicants as you can. Of course, you know, sometimes we're on deadlines and we need individuals to start at a certain time period. But again, you know, I think kind of taking some of the previous suggestions from the previous question based on some of the things to look for in addition to that would be informative as well. But mainly just take your time with the process and devote that time into, you know, getting to know your potential prospects as much as you can.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well. And I think just to add to that, I think taking an inventory, right, of what your needs are. Do you have, you know, where are the gaps in your team as well, right? I mean, if you're not a methodologist and the people that have applied are all looking for advanced analytic, you know, mentorship, then maybe you're not the right person. If it's like, so I think you have to know your strengths, right? So I think you need to take an inventory of what you bring, right? And then take an inventory of what those students need, right? I mean, I agree that sometimes you're just so excited, especially early on, that, you know, people want to work with me and this and that, but you need to be able to, you know, especially if it's, you know, a specific project you want them to work on or something like that, you need to make sure that they've got the requisite skills that they're going to be successful in, you know, because some of it is skills building, you know, at the postdoctoral level, maybe it's more paper writing and not maybe, it is more paper writing and leading that person towards independence, but you need to make sure that they've got ideas, right? I mean, you're not supposed to be the idea generator at a postdoc, right? I mean, I have my students, in fact, this morning, my postdoc, I tasked last week saying, okay, make a conceptual framework of what you're interested in. And let's really figure out, you know, where's your sweet spot? Where do you want it to be, right? So I think that, I just think that those are the kind of, you know, you just need to make sure you've got the right fit. And if someone in an interview situation can't articulate what they want to do and you know, I think that it's not going to be a good fit. So you got to figure out what your needs are and maybe kind of how their conceptual framework and their interests fit in with that, right? You just need to make sure that these fits are, so I think, you know, taking your own inventory of what your group needs will help recruit the right students. I think I said that very roundabout and I apologize, but I think the point got there at the end, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much both for oh, sorry, Patty, are you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I really, I like that way of thinking about it, because we all know that we might have a postdoc associated with a specific grant. It's a position filled in and it is specific, right? And it can't really diverge hugely outside of that when we develop a professional development plan for an individual. But when we have a training grant where there's more latitude, right, about what the specific project is, the postdoc can look pretty different. And that's why that clarity on both sides of what we're entering into is so important. When I took my postdoc, I remember interviewing, it was a wonderful, I made my decision, and it wasn't till after I got there that I think that my mentor realized I'd never actually taken a rat out of a cage before. My research had all been in humans. I had, you know, and all of a sudden I'm in a lab where I've got to do some preclinical work. And I just looked at her and said, how do you get them out of the cage? And I thought her eyes, I remember, like I learned it and we got there, but it was, you know, how we didn't have that conversation before I started, either one of us. I just don't know how that happened. So I just can't, I mean, I can't agree enough that this clarity for everyone is important. to make
Yeah,
this
what-
a good experience.
And what if, like, these are important conversations to have, because if you didn't, and then you have someone that shows up and says, I'm not touching that rat, you got a big problem. Everyone's got a problem, right? So, I mean, you know, I am always very clear that, you know, we all do the in the trenches work, right? No matter what it is. If it's cleaning, I do a lot of work with accelerometry data. You want to be an expert in the measurement of physical activity, you got to touch those dirty data that are coming in. You can't just wait for that pristine data set to come in and say, oh, I'm not doing that. You know, so those are things that you really learn about people, you know, in that process, and really being very clear of what the role is, right? And what you're going to do, including maybe it gets down to the nitty gritty of, you know, and you do need to get the rat out of the cage, but still, that could be a deal breaker on both ends. And then there
Yes,
you
it
are.
could be. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's so
Oh,
important to kind of lay out what the expectations.
yes.
Yeah, and actually to add to that, one thing coming from a student perspective, one thing I usually ask during interview is making sure that, like, I usually ask like the mentors, like, what are your expectations for your postdoc or your students? And if whatever they say matches what I can do, then I think that would be a good match, I guess. So that really reminded me of that. So I guess, like, following up, we heard from your perspective on hiring or recruiting. Since I graduated recently and am a current postdoc, I was wondering, like, what advice do you have for other students who are entering this recruitment process, whether if it's a master program, doctoral, or postdoc positions? And we can start with Dr. Clay.
Sure. In my opinion, I think it's very important to apply to places where you can do the work that you're passionate about. You know, so sometimes we might think, well, I'll just apply to 20 places and then make sure I get in somewhere. But, you know, the work that we do is very time consuming. It's very stressful. So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing something that you're passionate about. It might not be exactly down to the T your specific hypothesis that you want to look at, but it at least needs to be in that area where you know, really think you can make some impact and really do some things that over time could potentially change people's lives. So I think that's very, very important. Again, back to the match, and you know, whatever you can do before you are submitting those applications, whether it's, you know, to try to get another paper published, to get another presentation done, another skill that you can gain. So just anything that you can do in your current situation to make your application stronger. And again, applying places where you're passionate about what's going on, and making sure you've done the research and identified some potential people that you'll work with there, because most of the time the individual mentors will have the strongest input on the decision, whoever gets, you know, into the program and will work with them, or whoever gets the postdoc. So researching the individuals there where you're potentially going is very important, and finding a potential match if that's something where, like with graduate school, you can potentially find a match, or again, if it's a postdoc, you're probably working with a specific mentor.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think, I mean, if this is geared towards students that are entering the recruitment process, do your homework. Know the work and the research of the people that you're interviewing with. You know, read some papers. You know, people like to talk about their own work, right? I mean, but I think having done your homework is really important. And being able to say, hey, this is where I fit in, kind of back to that conceptual framework, right? In a way, you're selling us and we're selling you, right? It's a two-way situation. So I want to know why you're a good fit, and you need to be prepared to tell me why I'm a good fit for you. So I think doing your homework, and I mean, I think fit is super important, but I also think it's kind of cool to look out of the look out of the box a little bit, and maybe you know, look at programs that you might not have looked at. I think a lot of the skills that doctoral students have can be applied to a lot of different areas of, you know, research. So, you know, just saying, oh, I'm an epi person and I'm gonna stay in cardiovascular epi or physical activity epi or whatever I do is fine. But I think that think about try and think a little further along, and where do you see yourself going a little down the pike? Because part of a postdoc is, I believe at the postdoctoral level would be to you know, really start to hone an expertise. So maybe you've never done a lot, you know, you ultimately want to write a K and you want to do, you know, cognitive impairment work or something like that. You want to find a place that can take you to that next step, right? And if you're, you know, if you're also applying, you know, for at a postdoctoral situation, you also may be wanting to write a K and stay at this current university. So you need to think when you are picking a university and picking a place, is this someplace you may be able to see yourself in the long haul? Not, you know, not that people don't go other places, but I mean, if you're from Southern California and you're coming to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you don't want to winter, well then, you know, I mean, I think quality of life is really important here too. And I think we didn't talk anything about quality of life, but I mean, quality of life is important. So if the place where if you're a biker and a hiker and you're in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, you know, I mean, biking, of course, is fine, but I'm just, you know, I guess my point is know what you like and what you don't like too. So, I mean, really entering the recruitment process, do your homework, not only about, you know, the programs and the people you're interviewing with, but if you could see yourself long-term, because sometimes at the postdoctoral level, it could be a stepping stone into a career position at that institution as well. So.
I'm going to add one more thing here. Let me know what you think. Like recently, we had a postdoc that she was just regurgitating the result or whatever the studies I have done instead of understanding it, you know, what it means. So like you mentioned, know your mentor's work and understand it as well, and how you're going to contribute and what you're going to add into that. It's important to me, I think.
Right. And ask good questions. Yeah. Just say, you know, or in a way, do a little critical review of that paper, right? And, you know, and, you know, by showing interest in one's work and saying, hey, yeah, I really liked how you studied the foundational relationship between X and Y. I was thinking we could add this. I have expertise in life-based mobility, and let's look at real-world movement. And so, you know what I mean? Like something like that. That's showing your added value, you know, to the team, and it shows that you're thinking beyond, and that we all, I think I never said this in the last 35 minutes, but when we review doctoral applications, we're looking for independence of thought, right? That people are at least on the road to independence of thought, because that's what a doctoral degree affords you, right? So you want to see, hey, you can read it in the letters of recommendation, you know, people can talk the talk, right, in their personal statement. But when you're interacting with someone and they're kind of saying, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, you know, you want great discourse. And I have you can't see it, but I mean, I have my board up here, and the whiteboard with the ideas, you know, someone came for an interview and jumped up and threw something on the whiteboard, I'd be like out of my mind, so happy, you know. But I think that kind of engagement when you're in the recruitment process and showing what you got is just great. So doing your homework and then showing and telling, you know.
Well, and I really like the idea of, you know, thinking about what are the pieces, if it's a postdoc especially, that I'm trying to round out. I would say there's never a graduate program that can give you everything that might lead you on the path to where you aspire to be next. Most of it, but likely not all of it. And really, how do you help continue to build your path? And finding that postdoc fit, well, those are things that I wanted to know when I was interviewing them. These are how I help to figure out if we are a good fit. What are those pieces that you are really trying to gain more experience in? And how do you to get to the research questions you're interested in? And you're right, some people had really done a lot of thinking about and were clearly able to talk about it. And others were still in the phase of figuring that out, right? And so I think the more of that you can do, the better. And I'm also interested in your ideas about using maybe social media or recruitment consultants or any other kinds of things. Have any of you tried, or is it still just word of mouth and meeting you at your place? Have you tried other means of recruiting or identifying people? Because you read in Science magazine and some of these that postdocs are getting hard to recruit. It's getting hard to find the people, and will be increasingly. And I just wondered if you tried any new methods.
You think that's because they're not staying in academia, that there's so many more, industry type opportunities that were never open before?
That is a major driver, I think, in the basic sciences. I'm a clinical pharmacologist. The pharmaceutical industry is sucking out our people before they could ever do a postdoc. So, right. So it's pretty hard to sometimes find them too.
Are we portraying that academia is such a hard life, and that we're not maybe being as maybe sometimes we spend too much time at meetings commiserating instead of singing the praise of how of what we get out of academia? I don't know what the answer is, but there's certainly, I think, the pot's smaller, right? But maybe some of it is, I hate to say it, and I have no say in this whatsoever, but I know there's a whole movement towards increasing salaries for postdoctoral fellows, right? I know it's very low. It's hard, when you're moving through your life and might be starting at a different, that the salary, some people, I think that there's an inequity of who can afford to be a postdoc. I think it's really it's salaries aren't high, and people have loans, and people have things that they've been doing, and so I think we need to, there's ways to make it more lucrative, affordable, and wanting people to be there. It's gotten a little tough, I agree.
I have a question from the audience, if it's okay for me to read it. So it just came to me directly, so I'm going to read it. What do you do if the person turns out differently than you expected after you boarded them on? How much time do you give to try to resolve? Yes.
Is this a grad student or postdoc? Does it make a distinction?
No.
But there is a distinction, Dr. Clay, right? I think there is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, with that distinction, again, a postdoc most often is, sponsored by some type of grant opportunity. If it is, then you definitely want the right fit for the grant opportunity. So I think the window of opportunity there is probably a little smaller for the person. If you're talking about a graduate student, you try to see what what is it? Is it a difference in styles between the mentor and the mentee? And so maybe potentially a different mentor might work for the student, or is it just the student is not doing the work?
Right.
So I think there's different trajectories based on what the actual issue is. Like, again, if it's a stylistic thing, it might just be a bad fit, and maybe someone else in the department is a better fit for the student. But if the student isn't doing the work, then that's something different.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, I think that's why it's really important to meet and do IDPs, you know, individual development plans, right? They're required of people that are on NIH. I think every university does them now, and set expectations. And if people aren't meeting those expectations, sometimes sometimes it's not easy to have hard conversations with people. But if some people, you know, at the doctoral level, if they're not keeping up with the work now, they're certainly, you know, it's usually foreshadowing, you know, or if people are going through things, you know, that happens too. I mean, you know, but I think it's just sometimes you do have to cut your losses. It's hard to do, but, you know, postdocs are usually renewable. I don't know that anyone guarantees the 2 years, right? I mean, you're on a 1-year appointment that's renewable, assuming adequate, you know, progress. And at the doctoral level, I agree. We've definitely changed mentors. Sometimes people aren't a good fit with each other, or people take leaves of absences if they're having, you know, stuff's going on. But sometimes it just isn't a good fit, but you have to have the hard conversations and definitely put people on kind of performance, you know, plans. And maybe your style is different and their learning style is different. So I try different things, you know, to bring the best out of people. And if it's not a good fit, then, you know, yeah, sometimes you
I do want to kind of add to one thing that Dr. Glenn said. You know, things do happen in life. You know, so we have to make sure that if it's something to where we can refer the person to some type of services that are available at our university, that, you know, we try to make that distinction first. You know, has something went on in this person's life that, you know, changes their ability to do their job, or, you know, is affecting their mental health in any way. So I definitely think that's the first step, to try to make that distinction first, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, we have another question in the chat. Actually, I believe there's 2 questions. So first, what is your effective approach to recruit the proactive student with independent thinking? And 2, if a student needs to improve independent thinking, what are your effective approaches?
So recruit proactive students with independent thinking. So how to train students to be independent thinkers? Is that the question?
I think that's the second part of the question. And the first part was, what approaches can you do to actually recruit those kind of people? How do you find them?
Oh God, word of mouth. That's where you rely on your friends, you know. You know, when people have written 2 papers, you know, as a master's student, and, you know, published 2 papers, and then they're, you know, independence. I usually tell students the best way to show that you can do the work and be independent is to write papers, take the lead on things. And I don't know another way to, you know, it's usually that students say, how do I show I'm independent? I said, well, leading things, leading papers, but it's not only leading an analysis, it's leading an analysis and seeing it and interpreting it and seeing things through, showing that, you know, you're prepared. And you don't have to be 100% prepared. You just have to, I mean, for me, it's having that core training. You know, it's all when you're bringing in doctoral students and postdocs, my husband calls it the big P, potential, right? I mean, everyone, that's what it is. It's potential, but if you see through their work that they've been able to lead things and they've got independence of thought, and when they're talking to you, they're connecting the dots and things like that. That's kind of the seeds of independence, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes we have to give students opportunities to do things and allow them to fail.
Right.
Instead of always trying to catch them before they make a mistake, let them figure out their own mistakes. Ask them more questions instead of giving more directions to see what their responses are as far as what their goals are, what's next in their progression, that type of thing. So just I think being more the person to give them opportunities to kind of focus where they want to go, and letting that be more on them than us just giving them directives and seeing if they can follow out our directives.
That does make sense. Like the person is asking improve independent thinking. And that's what you're saying, that let them fall sometime, let them fail. Right. Because every time I remember my first paper or grant rejected, and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. But my mentor is like, she showed me like so many of her rejected grants. She's like, that's the reality, you'd write so many and you get accepted. So you should get happy for that one grant that's accepted, and don't worry about the other 9.
Yeah, I think students really appreciate when we share not our failures, but how the road is never straight, right? I think it's so important. I gave our department seminar a couple of weeks ago, and it was kind of a 13-year retrospective of the work that I've been doing. And I added anecdotes along the way and saying, God, this was the hardest paper we've ever published. And a student said to me after they appreciated that I understood the plight. You know what I mean? Like, it is not easy to sit and write all day. And we all know that. And by being real and kind of talking about that, I think students feel, they feel that we're in it together, and that, that you can get there. And it's not only them, kind of having writer's block at their desks, and I think that there's so many opportunities now. My daughter is a PhD student, and she told me yesterday that she joined, as part of ESPO and the other groups where there's writing groups, and there's so many opportunities now through Zoom and all these different opportunities to kind of flourish and grow and beef up your skills that I don't think I had in my day. So I think that there's so many other opportunities to grow and become more independent in these safer little work group environments where everybody's kind of in it together. And I think it's so important to share that the road has not been easy for me, and I get it, and I think kind of being real helps,
It's awesome. I don't see any more questions. Do you, Shane?
No, I think we're about at the close of our time soon. So,
yeah, I can close the session. So before I close, I would like to say thank you so much to both of you, Dr. Clay and Dr. Glenn, for sharing most important tips and strategies for both like mentors and mentee. To bring our session to a close today, we have asked both of you to share a pearl of wisdom. So we can start with you, Dr. Glenn.
Sure. So I guess to kind of wrap it all up, I think a key to finding a strong match is the core training of the potential trainee, right? Look at the nuts and bolts. And even if they don't specifically work in your area, if people have excellent fundamental skills, I think they're transferable to a new area. I think perfect matches are hard to find. So look for something that's reasonably close.
Dr. Clay.
Yeah, I think, one point that came up during the session that's important to me is, what's your availability as a mentor? Going into this upcoming year, I was at a point where, I found some great students. So I'm bringing in 3 graduate students into the lab this upcoming year. Whereas after I'm doing this year, next year, I will not recruit a student because I'm kind of at my capacity. So I need to be able to pour into those new students plus all the other individuals that are in the lab. So being able to make that identification as a mentor, can I provide value to these individuals that are coming in, and is now a great time, or should I wait and continue to effectively do what I'm doing as a mentor? Again, self-care is important.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's something we could all write down right now
Yeah.
and make sure we're doing it.
Right.
Yeah, we do have some additional resources that our committee has identified that we will make available with the recording of today's session. And as we come to a close today, I just encourage everyone who's been a part of our conversation to reflect on your own recruitment and hiring processes. Are there ideas or tips from today that you can incorporate into what you're doing? And also to just explore the resources at your own institution that might be helpful. I'll give you one example. I discovered when I contacted our university level graduate office that I could apply for grants to bring my top candidates to campus for an overnight stay, right? I didn't know those funds were available till I went to the office and checked it out. So just see what's there to help you in your own recruitment efforts. I think it would be worth the effort. And for those of you who are entering into the search for a postdoc or a graduate student position, I hope you found some ideas today that can help you think about making that as productive as possible. And also, everyone, please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their time, their career experiences, their perspectives today. And thanks to the work group members who planned the conversation. And also thanks to all the participants for your questions and comments. And of course, our big thank you to Gina Schoen from GSA, who handles all the behind the scenes work that makes these career conversations possible. You will find a recording available on GSA website under the career conversations shortly, and we'll be sending out a brief survey following up this event to that you can provide feedback and help us on future topics that you might like to in conversation about. And everyone, please enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.